All right. Thank you all for being here. So here's just like an initial render of my final design that I'll get to later, but I've called it the compactor. So I'm just going to go through my process of getting there, starting with information on Mr. K and what we are trying to do through this program, which you've already heard mostly about, so I won't go into too much detail about that. And then really get into all my designs, go like one by one. I have quite a few that I kind of just, I don't know, and if you've seen my like CAD or like Fusion 360, I just have like a whole lineup of them. And then just some backup information about myself. I've done a lot of 3D printing and 3D modeling, but it's always been for architecture and just like recreating like existing buildings for site models. So I've never really had this experience with making, I guess, like my own thing, and also my own thing that has like a function rather than just an aesthetic value, which has been very interesting and like similar, but also very different. And especially since we're in a remote mode, like I guess the hands-on 3D printing experiences, like stuff I already have, wasn't the focus, I guess. So Mr. K, I guess about a month ago we met with Lena and Alex, and they told us about Mr. K, who, as you've already heard, his left hand is completely amputated down to the forearm, and his right hand is all his fingers are amputated and part of his palm. So here you can see like his palm only goes about 2.5 inches out from his wrist. And it's also important to note that he has full mobility of his right wrist still. And so our task was to create a prosthetic device for Mr. K to eat food with. So this is his current device. It attaches over the palm, wrist, and forearm, so it goes down from his hand onto his forearm, which restricts his wrist mobility. And that was one of his, I guess, two concerns or complaints, was that he would like more of that wrist mobility, because it's the only mobility he really has left in his hand, and to be able to use that while eating is probably much more comfortable than to have it restricted. And this design also holds the utensil on the back of the hand, which we've seen is a common design feature for these devices, and maybe not one that would first come to mind as being very comfortable. So I guess the three things I've tried to consider is durability, flexibility, and stability. So his other concern, aside from his wrist, is that the device might break, which would he has people to help him prepare his meals and stuff, but it would still greatly reduce his autonomy, an ability to eat by himself, which is concerning. And then stability. So the device obviously needs to attach firmly to his limb, while also attaching firmly to a utensil, so that nothing really moves around, and it's more of an extension of I guess his hand, and not independently moving. And then other things that are became very important for position or for considering are the positioning of the utensil in relation to his hand. So his current device, that would be going off the top of the palm, and Chunkpei and August's devices, as well as mine, are going off the front of the hand. And then also easing of switching out utensils for washing or for another. So that's something I've thought about a bit, I guess, just easily, not because Mr. K doesn't have a left hand. It's not something he would do, but ease of switching out utensils for whoever's helping him to wash, or even during a meal, so he could switch between a fork and a spoon. So these are the main considerations I took in. So just some we've already seen a lot of the devices. The main device is this sort of strap over the limb with a utensil holder of some sort. Another thing though was this enable hand, which is stuff we had been, or something we had been looking at, and like this isn't for eating really, but it's like I guess the first like model I guess I used for the actual attachment to the hand. So it has this gauntlet and then a palm like covering. And so my first sketches, or I guess my very first sketch kind of took that, and then got rid of the fingers, and then I guess this was my first sketch, and it was to kind of have like a Swiss Army knife idea, like have like a knife come out and a fork and maybe a spoon, all at different angles, like optimal to where they could be used. However, at this point I had thought you could print silverware, and we're not like cutlery, but I was wrong about that. So this idea became, I guess, obsolete. And then I went on to my next idea, which immediately I went to attaching the utensil at the end of the fist. I didn't really explore options at other angles, aside from angling it like in certain ways off the end of the fist, but I didn't really consider like attaching to the bottom or top, just because I don't know, like testing, and it made sense to me to put it this way, and also considering that Mr. K was born with like fingers on his right hand, and like had been eating utensil probably in like this traditional way his whole life up until like a year or two ago. That's probably what he was used to, is that positioning in relation to his hand and arm. So that's where I went with all my designs. So the first one, the utensil, I didn't really think about the mechanism for attachment, but just going through, and there's a plate that goes on the top and the bottom, and a Velcro strap. And I also had this glove idea, which I think was good, especially for a prototype, to hold it onto the hand firmly. It's not something I really came back to. And given the like remoteness and I guess less printed prototypes to work with, it was a little more complicated to integrate. So my next like two like attachment ideas were a thumb screw to screw in the device. So here we can see a side view. There's this, I guess, thicker piece on the end, and a slot for the utensil, and the thumb screws go in. There could be one or two. And then also potentially a bottom plate as well to stabilize that. And then I had another idea of either a like spring or some sort of band that either pulls, like it clamps it closed, or well, yeah, basically, but it could be either like a torsion spring or like some sort of band, I guess. So I made, these two are, the models for my first paper prototype. So on the left, so on the left, this is also the glove, which helped a lot, like at least in the prototype, like stabilizing it to my own hand. There's two plates, and for a paper prototype, the two plate idea was very helpful, like stabilizing on the bottom and the top. And then I couldn't like really recreate a clamp, but I just imagined it being here and then taped the fork in. And this one worked like really well, and I could actually eat with this. So here I try to like recreate a clamp. Obviously I couldn't really do that, or like with so I had a rubber bands and like cardboard, like pinching the fork. Like I couldn't really like have it like be effective or functional, but it was helpful to see. And I mean, it hinted at that this would probably be a much more complicated idea that like just wouldn't be as simple or effective as the first one. And then the last one was, rather than like sticking this thumb screw part up, it would go down over the front. And this is ultimately the idea I guess I ran with the most. So yeah, here's my first model. So the first model has a big upper piece that goes all around the hand, and then a small bottom piece that I mentioned before to stabilize, and then a thumb screw this little slot, and then no covering in the front of the palm. So I also, like these two I kind of made at the same time, but I mean, this one has a covering in the front, and this one is not complete at all because I decided to scrap this idea. But here's, like, I had these like